A few weeks ago, I made a video about climate change. We talked about facts, books that we can read to better understand the issue, and actions that we can take to fight the current climate crisis. While Joe Biden was fighting rebound COVID in the basement of the White House, he watched my video, and that lit a fire under his ass. He pushed on the U.S. Senate to act, and they did.
The Senate passed a major bill overnight.
The largest federal investment ever, nearly $370 billion to combat climate change.
All that would be paid for by increasing taxes on top corporations.
A significant step forward, bigger than we've ever seen before in the country.
This bill will ensure that we can begin to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy.
The entire bill includes health reforms on prescription drugs and tax reforms targeted at corporations, but the bit that's getting the most attention is the portion of the bill that tackles the current climate crisis. It includes $60 billion for growing renewable energy infrastructure and manufacturing like solar panels and wind turbines, and tax credits for EVs and making homes more energy efficient. All of this is slated to lower greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, which could help us stop the rapid unraveling of this planet. And don't get me wrong, this is a very big deal, and it's a huge step in the right direction that'll set the stage for more actions in the future. But it would be remiss of me not to be vocal about its potential harm to low-income people of color who are disproportionately likely to live near polluting fossil fuel infrastructure, which is also getting a boost as part of this bill. Nevertheless, I want to celebrate, and I thought I would hit my own bookshelves for books that we can read to feel more connected to Earth and maybe walk away with a deeper appreciation of the environment. Plus, this is the perfect motivation for me to finally get these off my TBR and actually finish them. I'm in the middle of a lot of these books. Let's get into it. Let's start with Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. As a botanist, Robin Wall Kimmerer has been trained to ask the questions of nature with the tools of science. As a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, she embraces the notion that plants and animals are our oldest teachers. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Kimmerer brings the lenses of knowledge together to show that the awakening of a wider ecological consciousness requires the acknowledgement and celebration of our reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. For only when we can hear the languages of other beings are we capable of understanding the generosity of Earth and learning to give our own gifts in return. I found out about this book from a friend when they wrote this in a text message to me. I'm halfway through Braiding Sweetgrass and I love it. I cannot recommend it enough. It's a collection of essays from an indigenous scientist who spent her career trying to reconcile her Western colonialist education versus indigenous views of nature. I thought it would skew more scientific, but it actually just reads like a bunch of essays about life. She touches on gratitude, feelings of belonging where you live, motherhood, and identity. Her tribe's relationships to the land really shifted something in me. It felt like hearing a truth that I had been looking for years. It reminded me of how I used to view the world as a nature-loving kid, but how I lost that connection with my surroundings. And now I view everything through a colonialist and capitalist lens. I see the world as a bundle of resources that we must harvest and pay for, like water or fuel or food, rather than seeing the world as full of gifts that we take with gratitude and pay back through care of the earth. I feel like this mini review is such a tough act to follow, so I'm not even going to try. Revisiting this message makes me excited again to read this book. The next book on the list is Late Migrations by Margaret Rankle. From the New York Times opinion writer, Margaret Rankle comes an unusual, captivating portrait of a family and the cycles of joy and grief that inscribe human lives within the natural world. In brief essays, Rankle traces a tender and honest portrait of her unforgettable parents and of the bittersweet moments that accompany a child's transition to caregiver. Braided into the overall narrative, she also offers observations of the world surrounding her suburban Nashville home. Ringing with rapture and heartache, these essays convey the dignity of bluebirds and rat snakes, monarch butterflies and native bees. As the two threads haunt and harmonize with each other, Rankle suggests that there is an astonishment to be found in the common things, in what seems ordinary, in what we all share. For in both worlds, the natural one and our own, the shadow side of love is always loss, and grief is only love's own twin. In the opinion column for the New York Times, Rankle mainly writes about politics, culture, and nature. Her love for nature really comes to life in this book. She manages to interweave so many bittersweet pieces together and paints a picture about the South which is actually quite lovely, and it steers clear of the rural tropes. In an opinion piece called What is a Southern Writer?, she writes, "What if being a Southern writer is foremost a matter of growing up in a deeply troubled place and yet finding it somehow impossible to leave, of seeing clearly the failings of home and nevertheless refusing to flee. And after reading about a quarter of this book so far, I can see how it might be difficult to leave a place that you formed such a tight bond with and where so many memories have been etched. Two things that I really love about this book are that her brother Billy created all of the illustrations. I feel like they do such a good job at underscoring how cherished of a place this is to Margaret. In addition to that, at the end, there's a section where she cites works that inspired parts of the book. I like this because it gives me insight into the works that shape how an author writes and builds a list of things that I might want to check out in the future. Last on the list is Oak Flat by Lauren Redness. Oak Flat is a serene, high elevation mesa that sits above the southeastern Arizona desert, 15 miles west of the San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation. For the San Carlos tribe, Oak Flat is a holy place, an ancient burial ground and religious site. But after a massive, untapped copper reserve was discovered nearby, a new law transferred the area to a private company, whose planned copper mine will wipe Oak Flat off the map. Oak Flat tells a story of a fight that pits one of the poorest communities in the United States against the federal government and two of the world's largest mining conglomerates. Lauren Redness's deep reporting and haunting artwork anchor this mesmerizing human narrative. The dispute over Oak Flat resonates with foundational American themes: the saga of westward expansion, the resistance and resilience of Native peoples, and the efforts of profiteers to control the land and unearth treasure beneath it as the lives of the individuals hang in the balance. This battle between members of the San Carlos Apache tribe versus both a mining company and the federal government has been going on since 2005. Not only would building the mine entail the collapse of the tribe's ceremonial land, but since their spiritual identity is tied to that land, the members view the prospective demise of Oak Flat as a larger act of erasure and the violation of their religious freedoms. Those two mining conglomerates mentioned in the synopsis are called Resolution Copper, and they promised employment opportunities to the San Carlos Apache tribe, which to me doesn't sound remotely like a fair exchange. In fact, it's rather exploitative given that a quarter of Native Americans live in poverty. Not only that, but the Native American population is a relatively low wealth population. 20 years ago, Native Americans' median wealth was equal to only 8.7% of the median wealth among all Americans. And if you prefer actual numbers, the median for the American population as a whole was $65,000 compared to just $5,700 for Native Americans. Members of this tribe are skeptical, just as they should be. Mining in Arizona began with silver and gold and then shifted to copper and asbestos. And these types of arrangements have never paid off for Native Americans. They often get left jobless at the end of boom and bust cycles. I'll be sure to drop links down in the description for all of the books that we discussed today, as well as links to further reading for some of the statistics mentioned. I'm excited to finish these books and to spend some more time outdoors in nature before the colder temperatures roll through the East Coast. Senate passing the IRA gives me a little bit of hope that we'll all be able to engage in that just a little bit longer than we may have originally thought.